Now we're up to our first panel for the day, and we're going to be talking about sales best practices. Today we have Adam Graham, Ben Potter, Robin Bond, and Carl Heisman joining us on this panel. Adam is the founder of Grey Matters and BD Matters. Ben Potter is an agency coach, and he's also with the GYDA. Robin Bond is CEO at Code Definery. And Carl Heisman is a coach and net at so many agencies that I cannot count. Welcome to the stage, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
It's a pleasure having you all here, and I'm sure it's going to be a very, very fun session. So we're going to first go one by one and have your presentations. Then I'll be keeping my eye on the chat as well, and we'll have some time in the end to collectively take questions and chat amongst us. All good?
All good.
Sounds good.
Perfect.
Sounds good.
So I'm going to start with Adam. Adam, who has been cutting it really, really fine, gentlemen, joining like 10 seconds before the broadcast. Welcome, Adam. How are you doing?
I'm good. Good to be here. Sorry for cutting it so late.
That's perfectly fine. It keeps us on our toes. Yeah. So we're over to you, and you're going to be talking about should your agency's sales function be founder-led or team-led? So over to you.
Yeah, sure. And I'm happy to present slides. Yeah. Great. Bear with me 1 second. So. Can everybody see that okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, good. Cool. So I just wanted to, as I say, touch upon, founder-led sales, which was, the article that I wrote to support here. So there's a couple of just thought starters that I've got throughout the presentation. I think that you might recognize in yourself. So I just wanted to sort of talk through, what we see commonly in agencies, and how we can sort of help you through that sort of process, that journey. My background, I've worked in business development within agencies for about 20 years, worked in Omnicom and Dentsu agencies, and now we sort of do this for a lot of independents, across the world. And I think when people are going on a journey, when they found an agency, there's different sort of key milestones, I suppose, they hit throughout that, and sales has different challenges at each of those points. And so I wanted to sort of touch upon some of the things, or the misconceptions, I think, or the mistakes that people often or can make, throughout those stages, basically. And they're designed to be polarizing. So then it might not be any of these things. You might be a part of these things, or it might just be a time to reflect and think about whether or not you're recognizing some of these sort of behavioral traits within yourself and your organization. So I suppose one of the first things, when an agency starts, often it's to start doing more of the work they love, and sales is depending on your relationship with it has different connotations, right? And I think people need to understand how hands-on they're going to be with new business and sales, and how hands-off they're going to be, and what that relationship looks like throughout. So the first persona or so that I've kind of looked at is the ego. So often, we approach and we work with founders, and there's a sense that because that you guys may have run your agency or you've run businesses in the past, you've done it, that you kind of know everything there is to know about sales. And I think what we've seen in the last few years is that the sales role has massively evolved and transformed. There's more expectation and pressure on that role, and there's a greater diversity of skills required, right through from marketing all the way to sales and demand generation in between. And there's a sort of acceptance that, just because you have got your agency to where it is, it doesn't mean that you can get it to where it needs to go in the future. And I think it's always time to bring in, external support. That's why I guess a lot of you guys are here, to learn and think about that outside perspective. But I think sales, it's a discipline, it's a specialist subject, and often it's misunderstood and misrepresented in agencies. We're typically the new business team, or people are 1% of an organization, like yourselves. So, often therefore, there can be a sort of unconscious bias around understanding sales and what it is, and how to get the best out of that business development function. The next one I will touch upon is like the artist. So many agencies we see get founded. It could be someone who's very technological, strong, a developer, for instance, who wants to start a web agency. It could be a creative who wants to do more creative work, or a strategic mind who wants to do sort of more planning or more consumer insight work, for example. And often there's a thought when I start an agency, well, I guess get to do exactly what I want to do. I get to do the work that I love. The reality is that starting any business, you suddenly have to wear many hats, and some of those hats are things like sales and business development, along with operations, finance, legal, all the other HR, all the other processes that come with a business. And I think it's a misconception that people think that starting an agency, you can just sort of park this or delegate new business and not get too involved in it, whereas you can focus on doing the work. I think ultimately, no one sells the business better than you. You are the founder. You are the visionary. It's your passion. It's yours. So I think it's a real important thing to think about when you start an agency. You take on these roles and these hats, and then they're not going anywhere. And the sooner you sort of get to grips with them, I think the easier new business and growing your agency does become. One of the other ones here is sort of a bit of a naivety, just around referrals. So many founders who start their agencies, for the first 3, 4, 5 years potentially, they can go quite well, and they go to their network, they go to their previous employees, their friends, their family, their immediate people that they can reach out to, and that's where they often generate a lot of their leads from. And it's a kind of double-edged sword, and it's a gift and a curse. And whilst that can be fantastic that you're getting all this new business through, it's not sustainable, and referrals are not sustainable. Whilst you can have a referral strategy, and they should always be a core component to your new business machine, they are not enough on their own. And the bigger you grow, the more overheads you take on, the more pressures there will be on the business, and the bigger the demand on sales there will be. And so therefore referrals are not going to stand the test of time, and where you need the agency to get to. So you've got to be looking at those inbound and outbound channels, and how you can utilize all of those channels and sources to generate a consistent number of leads. The work. So yes, my milkshake brings all the boys to the yard. So basically, this is basically a misconception where I feel like, of course the work is important and will lead to referrals, and if if the product's not good, then you're not going to be winning new business, right? But there's also a belief that the work is so shit hot that it just sells itself, and the inbound leads are just going to flood themselves in through the doors. And it's just not the case. We are in such a saturated market, which with more agencies and collectives and consultants, independents, all cropping up all over the place, right? And unfortunately, no matter how good your work is, and we've sat there and I've sat on judging panels for awards, and I've seen some fantastic work. It's not enough. You've got to get your name out there, and you've got to get awareness, and you've got to go out there and hunt and find leads for yourself. So just relying on the work is not going to cut it, and it's not going to give you all you need to be successful. Blind, which could be not just you, but your agency. Often I think plans sit in founders' heads. They have a vision, they have a direction, but how well is that vision communicated? How well do other people understand that, and the people that you want to take on that journey and that are coming on board? I think that those processes to creating a more sustainable business development approach need to be documented. They need to be taken out of someone's head. They need to be in project management software. They need to be in CRM systems. They need to be in pitch processes and lots of other tools, templates, and in an entire toolkit that can enable your workforce to sell for you. Otherwise, you're never going to remove yourself from the burdens of new business. So it's important that the plan is not just in your head. It's important that everybody understands your proposition, the vision of the agency, where you're going, and how they can actually go out there and sell and make it happen for you. The next up is the little black book, which we've heard many a times of that. We'll just hire the best sales guy out there. He's got the greatest black book ever, which is basically referring to a network of people that they can just introduce you to. And it's just, again, it's not sustainable. The only way you can generate sustainable business development is through your own black book, your own CRM, your own relationships that you need to nurture. And just hiring sort of a gun for hire is a short-term way of, potentially bringing in a couple of leads, but then it will just fall flat on its face when you realize that that person has introduced their last 10 agencies to exactly the same leads as they've just given you. And they've got one trick and they can't go anywhere from that. So I think it's a bit of a short-lived plan that needs to be looked at. So to sort of summarize and where I think it needs to go is, very much developing, a founder-led strategy. Your business, needs a clear vision and a direction in which it's going in. You need to be, ruthless with your positioning and your proposition and who you're going after and what you stand for. And you need to make sure that that vision is understood and therefore can be activated, by the rest of the team. But you need someone who is focused on the now, and you need someone who's focused on the future. The next part is just really about fostering a collaborative culture. So my philosophy is that business development is not a role, it's a culture. And a lot of people think they can hire salespeople, they can delegate this problem, and that will take care of it for them. But the reality is that, new business and the activities that needs to drive towards a new business machine are going to be multifaceted. You're going to need people updating websites and doing events and writing content and attending meetings and attending events and pitching and all the rest of it. And one person can't do that. One person can drive a culture for sure. So it's really important that new business lives and breathes in everything that the agency does. You have very clear defined roles and responsibilities for everyone in the organization. And part of new business is attributed to their job descriptions and how people get appraised for what they give back towards the growth of the agency. So yeah, thinking about it in its sort of wider context. The third part is really about making the time, and this is the classic working on your business, not just in your business. And founders can definitely easily get swept up in doing too much, getting too focused on the client work and into the deliverables. And really from day one, I think you should be looking to create, sort of remove yourself to make that agency autonomous without you. And that's great for when you want to sell an agency, for when you want to take time off, for the growth of it. That's the way it needs to go. And I think people don't dedicate enough time on their own agency and on their own businesses. And so, if you've got 100% of your time to sell, often people will sell 100% of their time because they think that makes them the most money, and it might do in the short term. And the problem is that you've then taken your eye off the ball and not on the long term. So who is nurturing that long-term pipeline? Who is always thinking one step ahead and creating that long-term content plan? And I think that's where you need to start thinking about the now, start thinking about the future, and how you can dedicate, maybe 20% of your time to growing your agency. And really the founder's responsibility, in my eyes, should be more around pitching, more around driving the vision, driving the positioning, PR opportunities, speaking opportunities, and really being that figurehead for the agency, not weighed down by all the deliverables within the company itself. And yeah, I think that just comes into my last point, which is about, who's steering the ship. And you need to lead from the front, and that's what a founder should be doing, in my opinion. You set out that culture, you develop those processes to build sustainability within the entire organization, but it's your job to steer the ship, drive the vision, and make sure that we're headed in the right direction. And if nobody's doing that, then you can often be sort of spinning your wheels, being on that hamster wheel and not getting too far. So yeah, that's it from me. I know, short and sweet. I'm happy to answer any questions, but just wanted to talk you through some of the things that we see in agency land, and some of the misconceptions that do exist. And if any of you want to get in touch, please do. Happy to have a chat.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Adam. I have a few questions that I've been jotting down everything that you've been actually saying, and I really love the internal personas of the founders, like the ego, the artist, the naive, the milkshake, and everything that you just talked to us about. I just wanted to ask you. I got two questions jotted down. One is, what is the right size for an agency to start thinking of having a specialist person for business development or for sales? I mean, most of the agencies that do sign up with us are in the 11 to 49 bracket, which is a bracket which is where you really start to grow. But there is also a 20% of our audience, they must be here right now listening to you, that are in the 1 to 9 brackets in the number of employees. So for those agencies, it has to be definitely founder-led, yeah? And then what do you think is the right threshold to start thinking of having a dedicated person for business development? I know you said it's a culture thing and not a single person's job, but when does it really, in your mind, really justify having a person for it?
Well, I guess the first thing to say, it depends on the founder, right? Have they got a strong sales background? Do they know what it takes to drive sales? And some of them have and do, and therefore, they can drive quite a lot and get quite far, with that activity. I think also it's about, like you said, how you use that wider team. So suddenly, if everybody who joins that agency, even between 1 and 10, has a part responsibility to new business, then you start to divvy up those responsibilities. And the way the world's working now, it's worth thinking about flexible working and what is needed. So you could have a part-time salesperson. You could have someone who does a day a week, half a day a week. I think it's important that probably from the beginning there is some element of that and some element of support around the business. We run our BD Matters community, so it's a way of learning, and it's a way of just taking on board some of that thinking. It's not a full-time person, but you're getting sort of mentoring and coaching through it. So I think once you get to maybe 10 people, I would start to think about having, a full-time dedicated person in that business development role for sure. But I think what often happens is actually at the other side is that person, most agencies keep a business development team at the size of one, even when they get to 20 people, 30 people, 40 people. You probably often find even 50 agencies of 50 with still one person dedicated to business development. And I think it probably needs to scale much more considerably than that if you want to have a sustainable pipeline. And you've got to invest in it. The more you invest in the beginning, the better it pays off at the end. And so often people leave this till it's way too late. They underinvest in this area and they think the founder can carry it all on their shoulders. And then they find out that they need a lot to happen. And suddenly they haven't been investing in this pipeline and all this content. And then there's a huge kind of cultural and process shift that needs to happen when you're like 20 people, you're 10 years into your existence, and suddenly it's turning around an oil tanker, and it creates a lot of difficulty. So slowly but surely.
And would you agree that sales and business development in general, it has to be an always on activity? It's not something that you can stop, because I've seen before, and we in our program we had people experts come in and talk about this before, as in you realize it too late when you stop building a pipeline. Yeah. So you need to be always building a pipeline. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah. That's it. We liken it to like cleaning your teeth, right? You wouldn't just leave it like a couple of years, then think, I should probably clean those bad boys. You're going to do a little bit every single day, and that's the same with new business, right? It's never going. And I think the sooner you embrace that, the easier new business becomes. I think people think they can maybe hide from it or run from those challenges, but actually, it's a little bit every day. It's and then it becomes habitual, right? And it's just whether it's a bit of outreach, whether it's a LinkedIn post, you've got to decide what your version of that is. It could be networking, attending events. You've got to try and find your natural rhythm into that. But the minute you sort of stop is the minute you notice a dip in your pipeline, in months to come. And that's why often people talk about the peaks and troughs of new business. They kind of go, oh, it's up and down all the time. And it's like, well, how many of those people could say their output is consistent, right? You can only be in control of you. And so you've got to look at the lead factors and the lag factors, right? You can control how many case studies you write, how many events you go to, how many blogs you do, how many social posts, how many times you outreach to someone. These are all things in your control. Nobody is stopping you doing that. Anyone who says I don't have time is just a lazy excuse, right? Nobody is stopping you doing that stuff. We can't control whether someone's going to say yes or no to us, right? And sign off on a new business inquiry or whatever it might be. We can't affect other people's thinking, and we have to focus on what we can control. So make
control the controllables.
That's set KPIs.
And then for that, my last question to you. I have worked in really big corporations, and I have seen big sales floors being managed sales performance way, power hours, and stuff like that. We know that this doesn't really apply to the agency world, the agency land, because the type of activities that you just referred to is going to events, socializing, networking, and reaching out, all that stuff. It's not like a cold call outbound environment when you're trying to do sales. So basically, what are the basic KPIs of a business development person if we would hire one? How will we judge their performance? Both input and output, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, business development is broad, and so you've got deliverables from a marketing standpoint in terms of it could be content pieces. You could have KPIs around newsletter engagement, open clicks. You could have social media engagement, impressions, comments, things like this, which are important. I think ultimately, when you're building a sales funnel, you have to sort of generate, marketing qualified leads, right? And at the very, very basic level, I think we need to distinguish between somebody who hasn't heard of us ever before and somebody who has, right? And it's a very loose way of defining a lead, but at least you've then got that person at the top of your funnel. You can then sort of measure meetings, sales conversations. How many people are you actually meeting and on a call with, or sharing your credentials with, and having that engagement with? I think that's a really important measure. And then beyond that, you're looking at opportunities, briefs. How many real live opportunities is that person generating, or is that coming through into wins? But I think you've got to look at, you don't want to overanalyze it, and every sales funnel is completely different. So it's about building the right strategy for you. But you've got to look at activity, and you've got to be able to measure KPIs and activity in the short term, not just the long term, because otherwise you can't affect things soon enough. And if suddenly things aren't happening sort of month to month, it allows you to adjust that strategy, or allows you to analyze what is and what isn't working, which is obviously hugely important for new business. So there needs to be a measurement framework. And I would say there's probably not enough measurement that goes on right now across the agency world. And I think some of that is maybe poor use of CRM systems. But even if it's done on a spreadsheet, whatever you're tracking, just make sure you're doing it consistently, right? Because then at least you can have a way of measuring it compared to month on month. If you can't keep chopping and changing strategies, tactics, and how you're measuring,
I did a CRM project once, and the thing was, the catchphrase was, we know it's biased, but at least don't change your bias. Keep it the same so you can compare stuff.
Yes, that's what I was basically saying.
Yeah, super. Well, Adam, thank you so much for this. Please do stick around until the end of the panel because we're going to open up for wider questions in the end. And thank you so much.